Hello everyone. Little introduction. I'm Siebe Sysmans. I graduated here at the KDG 5 years ago, and now I'm working at AppFoundry as an Android consultant. Today I'm gonna talk about Android plugin architecture, how you can set up two apps to communicate with each other and extend functionality. Uh, so there are some ways to do cross-app communication in Android. Uh, Very simple, an intent and a broadcast receiver. So you send a broadcast with a payload, another app can catch that with a broadcast receiver, do some work, send it back. Very simple. A content resolver and a content provider. So an app can have a content provider, and that's gonna provide content, mostly out of a database. Um, and it can expose that content provider to another app, and that's gonna read the data with a content resolver. Or you could expose services, and that's what we're mostly gonna talk about this evening, where an app exposes a service, another app connects to that service, and there you have communication that way. So we're first going to talk about why. Why would you do Android plugin architecture? Then we're gonna talk about user plugin discovery. How do users discover your plugins? Host app plugin discovery. So how does your host app find your plugins to communicate with? And how do you communicate with your plugins? So I have a couple of examples. So dash clock widget. It's a home screen widget. Used to be on lock screens as well, but since that removed from Android, you can't put it on your lock screen anymore. So it's a clock, and it has some basic functionality, showing the weather, battery status, and for example, the last one, that's a plugin. So other third-party developers can develop plugins for dash clock, and it's gonna extend the functionality of dash clock to show more data you want. This is the configuration screen where you could add another extension, and it's gonna search in the Play Store for extensions for you to install. Another one is Mosaic live wallpaper. So it's a live wallpaper. You have a wallpaper app with different sources of images, and it's gonna rotate over those images. But what the plugins are different sources. So Mosaic has already a couple of sources for images, but you can install different sources for those wallpapers, like the Reddit or the Flickr. If you install those, you could get the data from those sources. But why? Why would you do that? So the first reason would be an ecosystem-based marketing. So that's a system where you don't create your own plugins, or maybe a minimal amount of plugins, but you open up your API to extend your app, like Mosaic and Dashclock. And third-party developers use that API to develop a plugin. So indirectly, they're promoting your app. You have to promote your app in the beginning, maybe, to get the plugin ecosystem going, and then people are gonna start making plugins, and they're gonna promote those plugins for you. So eventually everything comes down to your host app. Second reason might be business model, a free app with some basic functionality, and then paid plugins. You could achieve the same with in-app purchases, but with this system you could leverage the refund system of the Play Store, where people can try out this functionality first, and within, I think nowadays it's 1 day, they can refund that app, and then they eventually had a trial period, and with in-app purchases that's not possible. Or permission mitigation before Android 6. So standard in Android, when you install an app, it's all or nothing. Before Android 6, like you press install, you get your list of permissions, and then it's like, yeah, no, okay, too much permissions. But so people might not install your permission-rich app, but you could provide a core app with less permissions, and then let the user install plugins that are gonna give functionality with those permissions. Like reading the context for finding friends somewhere. So if users don't like that, they can install the base app, and if they really want to find friends, they can install a plugin for that. It's a simple example. People are not gonna do that, but how are users gonna find your plugins? So you could have hard code references in the core app, mostly with the free app with a basic functionality, and then paid plugins where you're gonna have a button, click that, and oh, sorry, you need this plugin for that. Could be a hardcore reference. A link to a search term on the Play Store, like the Musai app and the Dash Clock app did. You click on Find Plugins, and they just redirect you to the Play Store with Musai extension. It's gonna find plugins that way. You could download a JSON, use a web view, whatever you can come up with to just provide a list of your available plugins. Now your users find your app. How is your host app gonna find your plugins? Well, the most simple example is a broadcast receiver, maybe. So you have your host app, and that's gonna broadcast, hey, are there any plugins? And then you have plugin apps that have a broadcast receiver. They're gonna receive that broadcast, and they're gonna send back, yeah, sure, I'm a plugin. And then your host app knows, okay, so I have these plugins I can communicate with. But it's not really recommended to do it with a broadcast receiver, because when you send that broadcast to search for plugins, it's gonna wake up every one of those apps. They're all gonna have to do work sending back the acknowledgement like, yeah, sure, I'm a plugin. And you're not really sure when every plugin app has responded. If an app is really slow or maybe doing some extra work, you don't know when the acknowledgement is gonna come. A better way is through the package manager. The package manager in Android knows a lot, well, everything about the apps. What services are there, activities, metadata. We can leverage that system. So every plugin is gonna implement a custom intent action. I'm gonna show some code after this package manager part. So, and the package manager queries for every component using that custom action. So you can ask from your package manager, hey, are there any apps that have defined this custom action? And then the apps are gonna wake up. And you can also easily get the metadata of that component or extension or plugin, so that you could get API levels or a name for that plugin without waking up the app. I'm gonna show some code for that. So I'm gonna make it readable. So I guess everyone can read that. Let me first get a plugin. So at the end of this presentation, I'm gonna show you the demo app that I made, and it's gonna be a simple calculator with a plus and a minus operation, but you can download other operations like multiply and divide. You can ask some money for that, maybe, I don't know. So in the manifest, we define the service, and it's the add plugin, and it's gonna define an intent filter with the action simple calculator plugin. So, and then in your app, so that's the plugin app, and then in your host app, you can get the package manager, query for that service, and just say, okay, I want to find every app that has defined this custom action, the plugin. And I also want the metadata for that, for the basic name, and maybe an app icon or an API level that you've set, but we'll come to that later. So that's it. Then you find your apps. So it's gonna return a list of resolve infos, that's some basic information about the service. Let's go back to the presentation. So you found your plugins, and how do you keep your lists of plugins in your app updated while there might be some package replacing and adding going? So, and the Android system sends a package broadcast every time an app is installed, deleted, or replaced, meaning updated probably. So in the host app, we can check for those broadcasts, and then we can update a live list of plugins using the same search mechanism that we just saw. So an app gets installed, an app gets replaced, an app gets deleted. The Android system knows that, and it's gonna send a broadcast. And our host app is gonna catch those broadcasts with a broadcast receiver, and it can update, for example, a list view or a recycler view with new information. Some code for that as well. So right here, I've put it in on resume. I create an intent filter, and I just say, okay, I want package added, package removed, and package replaced. I want to know what's happening there. You have to add a data scheme package. That's the way Android's gonna send those broadcasts. And then you register your receiver. And what is every time there's a broadcast of that way, I'm just gonna say, okay, in my adapter, find my set the plugins to find my plugins. So it's gonna use the same search we just saw from the package manager and just update the list that way. It's very easy. Don't forget to on pause unregister that receiver again. Otherwise your app is gonna get the updates in the background. That was that. So now our app found our plugins. How are we gonna communicate with those plugins? Well, at first there's the metadata I talked about. So it's great for getting static data like the plugin name, the plugin icon maybe, or the API level. You can define custom metadata in those services. Quickly gonna show you. So remember that find plugins, I just saw you. So it's gonna search for those services, and then I'm gonna make a list of plugins using that resolve inflow. So I have a plugin here, it's just an object, and that's gonna hold the service name, the service package name, an operation symbol, the minus, the plus, or something like that, and the API level. And it's really quickly, it's really easy, just gonna say, okay, from that resolve info, the basic information of that service, get me that service info and the metadata, and then just get me the string, the metadata operation symbol, or the int, the API level. And they're defined in the service as well. So in your manifest, in that service, you see metadata, and here's the metadata operation symbol. It's a plus right there, and the API level is 1. So that's how your host app is gonna know some basic information already without waking up the whole app. Another way of using the metadata, this isn't very readable, but I'll explain it. You can use resources from any other app in Android. So the resources in an Android app aren't really secure in that app. Every app is gonna be able to leverage those resources. So, yeah, you can't see the mouse, of course. So the first line, I'm just gonna get the package manager. And the second line, I'm gonna say, okay, package manager, get me the resources for application with this application package. And then you have the resource, every resource in the app. So then you can say, ask from the resources, okay, get me the identifier. Every resource in Android has an int identifier. Get me the identifier for the app icon drawable. Those have to be defined, of course. So if you're gonna let people make third-party plugins, you have to define like, okay, I want your app icon to be named this, and maybe some background to be named this, that you can use those. And then they're just usable in your app. So yeah, the first reaction I had from that was, whoa, is it really that insecure? Can you really get to every resource in every app? Yes, you can. You actually can. Um, yeah. So now we got the metadata. How can we do communication? Well, first the, 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 the least best example. With a broadcast receiver, you can just say, okay, plugin that I found, provide me data. On an intent, a broadcast, you can set a component. So you can set on your broadcast, okay, I want only that plugin to receive this broadcast. Otherwise, every plugin is gonna receive this, and then every plugin will say, okay, here's my data. But you only want it from that one plugin app. But it's really, again, that disconnected broadcast system. We really don't want that. So what we're gonna do is remote service binding. So this is the preferred way. The remote services are found with the package manager. We saw that. And the communication process protocol we're gonna use is the ADL, so the Android interface, I forgot it. Definition language, thank you. So it's basically just an interface describing what operations we're gonna do and what data is gonna be sent. And you could have a callback with the messenger API of Android for delayed responses. I'm only gonna show you direct requests and an immediate return, but you could set up a system where you get an async result back if your plugin is gonna do some networking. About that ADL, so it's an interface that's gonna describe your service and what can we send over the line. So all the primitive types, a string, a char queue sequence, a list, and a map, but also a parsable, and that's interesting. A parsable is sort of like something serializable for people that don't know a parsable. So you can get a complex object, a complex Java object, and return it to its primitive types, and then there's a way of rebuilding it to its complex object. So you can actually send complex objects over the line between those apps, and that's what we want. So you have the ADL, and at compile time, it's gonna make a stub for that interface. And you have to implement it in both the host and the plugin app. So they're both the same. And then you make an implementation of that, and then your host app can bind to the other implementation of the plugin app, and then you're set just to inter-process communication. I have some code for that, for just to clarify. So I made this. Yeah, can't read it, but that's a library on the left there, and that's defined a plugin service. So if I want to other people to make third-party plugins, I'm gonna send this library to those people. They can use that. So what this defines is just when you bind to this service, return a binder. And what the binder is it's the stub of our plugin interface, and it only defines one method, and it's calculate. I can show you that here. So this is the ADL, just saying, okay, so I have one operation, calculate with two numbers, two doubles, and return me a double. So in your plugin, you just implement that, and here I'm doing a get results as an abstract method, so that's our add plugin. So a third-party developer, the only thing he has to do then is extend the plugin service and just implement the get result. So the add plugin just gonna return number plus number. Really easy. So that's in our plugin app, the stub. Now in our host app, so we have a click listener on our list of plugins, operations of our simple calculator. And when they are clicked, I get the information from a plugin, so the service, the package name and the service name, and I bind the intent. I make an intent for the package name of our plugin and the service name, and then I just bind to it. What we get then is the service connection, and here we just see, okay, so we get our interface again from the stub, the same one as in the plugin, and then we're set to call that function, that calculate function, on the interface. So when you call this, it actually goes to the plugin, calculates there, we get the value back here, and we can set the results. Yeah. There's a remote exception, so you have to catch that. If something goes wrong in the communication, you have to provide some error handling. And then we can unbind the service again for this example. So this might be a bit complicated. Does anyone have a question about this here already? Because otherwise we're going to go to a demo.
So is this like a web service?
It's not really a what? So the question was, is this like a web service? No, it's not a web service. It's a service. A service is something that runs in the background of an Android app, but just as a web service, you're calling to it. But yeah.
But it's between processes.
Yeah, it's between two different processes.
It's not a cross network.
No. So the question was, is this going to go across a network? No, it isn't. It's just a service runs on the device in a process, and you're binding to that service. There's nothing to do with network connections. But your plugin could do a network call, maybe. But just let me go to the demo. So I hope this is a bit clear. So I'm first gonna install my simple calculator app. So I install it and it says invalid APK file. That's great. That's because I'm in the wrong folder. So install simple calculator and popped up here. So I'm gonna open that. It's not really readable there, but let me try to zoom in. That's better. So this is my demo app, and I just have two edit texts to input a value. So I'm gonna input 10 here and 5 here, and then I can choose what to do with those numbers. So our host app already has defined two operations that are actually just services in the host app. So you have plugins in your host app as a bundle to provide some basic functionality. We can do plus and minus. It's as easy as that. But then we can install our advanced operations. And when I'm gonna click enter, you're gonna see now you have plus and minus, that the other ones are gonna pop up. So that's with the package broadcast, or there's an app installed. So enter, okay, they're there. So another app from another manufacturer with another completely different package name, package signing key is installed, but you get the info here. And when you click on it, the first one is gonna be slow, I'm gonna warn you. So I click on multiply, it's gonna multiply. The first one is always slow, because the plugin app hasn't started yet, and it needs to boot up a little bit. But from then, I can just do multiply and divide. So it's gonna call functionality in that other app, use that, and send it back to our app. Why is the first? Yeah, the first one is slow because I said that it needs to boot up the app, warm up. If you're gonna use this in a production app, you can provide some dummy call to do that first before your functionality, so that the app is already warmed up. When I uninstall this app, so let me check the right commands. So this one, if I uninstall the app, you're gonna see that they're just gonna disappear again. So why is that handy, the live updating? Maybe you have your app running and you're on your desktop on the Play Store and you're choosing your plugins there, and you click install and install, and then your app live updates instead of needing to refresh that. Um, so that was the demo app. I have some small other points I want to talk about. Maybe I need to zoom out again. Play. So GUI plugins. So we only talked about data now, but can I provide some UI to our host app? Web views maybe? I hear a lot of you, web views, don't like web views, yeah, me neither. But the plugin provides data, maybe a static URI using the metadata, then the plugin doesn't need to boot up. Or a dynamic URI using the inter-process communication, the two methods we saw with the broadcast receiver or the service. And then your host has a web view that loads the data. It's easy, but it's not native, and it has some security issues. Like, it can load JavaScript in your own app. And since the JavaScript is coming from a foreign app, you really don't know what that's gonna be. So there might be some security implementation. Yeah, you know what I mean there. But the better way is remote views. Remote views are native. And what a remote view is, it's just a view, a basic view, like a text view, an edit text, an image view, but you can send it through another process. You might have seen it in home screen widgets. Home screen widgets are just remote views. You can't manipulate widgets directly. You have to build it in memory and then push it to the system that's gonna display it. You can't access remote views, home widgets directly. Lock screen widgets. Custom notifications are remote views as well. But you can only use basic view widgets. So the text view, the text image view, a full navigation view from the Android system, you're not gonna be able to push that as a remote view. But they are parcelable. So again, that serializable part. So you could roll your own parcelable. So you can make your custom view parcelable. It's more flexible, but it's a lot more work because you have to, the whole view stack of your view, you have to make that, you have to represent that as primitives. So it's gonna be a lot of work. And you're gonna need to version your view building, because if you update your views and you have another plugin, you want your versioning to be there to build different views, different versions of views. Some extra tips. So think about versioning, not only for the GUI, for the widgets, for the remote views, but just your entire system. It's like making an API for a web service, but locally. So you could make changes in the future that you need to be able to handle. Abstract to a library for distribution. So what I've done, like made the simple service, put the complex functionality in the service. People only need to extend that functionality, and they can easily make a plugin. Do input validation in your host. You're gonna load in different foreign data in your app. You want to check that before you do something with that. And make sure it's secure. Important part of that is don't leak data if you're not gonna do third-party plugins. If you're gonna write plugins for your own, you could use signature level permission. And what that is in your host, you're gonna define a permission, and your plugins aren't gonna use that permission. And the permission is set to be signature level. That means that only a plugin, the plugin can only communicate with the host app with that permission set. So no one can get in between that there. And that's about it. I have some questions. If you have some questions, please do.
Just on the previous slide about the think about your version.
Yes.
So can you, when you do the lookup through PackageManager,
Yeah.
can you provide a version that you're looking for?
No, you can't. Oh yeah. So, yeah. Repeat the question. So, when you're looking for your apps, can you provide the version that you're looking for? You might. Well, in the setup I did, you can't, but you can look for all the plugins and then filter plugins that way, because you have the metadata. But you could implement another custom action. So I just set plugin as an intent action where I'm gonna query on, but you could set plugin version 1, plugin version 2, then you can query on those that way. Any other? Yeah.
When you instantiate a plugin, does it start the whole host process, or is it something separate, something smaller?
So when you can you repeat that?
So when you have an host app and you invoke a plugin from another app,
Yeah.
the other app start completely by itself? Is it the whole app or just a part of it?
Well, so if you're calling a plugin, does the whole app start up? Well, your app gets initialized, so your application object will get initialized, then the service will get initialized. So yeah, basically, the whole app will boot, but only the application, its dependencies, and the service. So no UI stuff and stuff like that, of course.
Just maybe one more. Do you have any production experience with using plugins?
So do I have any production experience using those plugins? Yes, yes I have. Um, Currently I'm working on a project. It's a web shop, and we've been acquired by another web shop, but we still work independently. But we had two Android applications, both of us had Android applications, but we wanted to provide the login system, and we did that with a plugin. So that in the background you can call login. So our app is the host, and the other one provides a plugin, a login plugin. So we can click login, and it's first gonna try, okay, do I have something here from our own web shop? No, it's gonna call the plugin. Oh, here you were logged in. It sends a token back, and you're logged in. We secured that with the signature level permissions because yeah, it's actually a plugin in between, because otherwise you can't do signature level permissions because the both apps existed already. But yeah, I've used this for that. That was it. Okay, thank you.